you guys. Just here to give a little update. So I assume if you're here, you've been following for most of the time that I have been displaced from my home. I had a large following, approximately 60 to 100,000 followers across platforms when I was working in entertainment and the nightlife. I closed those accounts and created new accounts after I changed my focus in 2020. So a lot of people, I think it was about 17,000, followed my new account. They left my old account when I was living in my own home with my three at the time. Now I have four children, Viviana, Lewis, and Alexis. And they kind of followed me over to my new account, which was a personal blog. So I was no longer using my social media for entertainment or promotions. I began using my social media profiles for mostly business and personal blogging. I began a sort of service-based company called Heather the Helper, taking care of elderly, organizing, cleaning homes. I was selling a few products, things of that nature, and then I was always working on the creative side, which was GoPro Solo, which is more like the pain and suffering that I've experienced. It was the only outlet that I would have for expressing myself when I felt completely unheard in other ways. And as I would be bullied or harmed or assaulted sexually or mentally or physically, I would take the pain and create some sort of campaign. You may have heard of the What's Your Impact campaign, which is basically just a conversation starter for people to say, what is your impact? How are you impacting the people around you? How are you impacting yourself, your life, your family? And this is kind of an anti-bullying campaign without the negative. So by asking people to question their impact, if they're bullying someone and you ask, what is your impact? There's no way that a person can honestly answer that question without acknowledging that they're being a negative, harmful, detrimental, abusive person. So it's kind of like a conversation starter to ask for accountability from others and kind of spark a sort of self-introspection that no one can force on a person. They can only, force on themselves. It's a question that requires ponderance and thoughtfulness and, self acknowledgement and self-judgment, So I felt like that was what I should continue to develop with GoPro Solo, and I still have that brand and that company. And I am still working on things with that, but my focus primarily now is on my newborn son and my three children. I'm not permitted to talk about the case with my children. With my son. My children are with their father. I have court-ordered primary joint custody of all three of my older children, and the baby, approximately 3 days after he was born, was taken from me because I was homeless, even though I have been calling housing assistance programs and the police and documenting on social media as well as other outlets for the past since 2020. So I can't get into details about that case, but if you are a human rights lawyer or a civil rights lawyer, please, please, please send me an email. I am eagerly seeking the assistance of a lawyer for this case. I have no history of drug or alcohol addiction. I have no criminal background, and I do have an extensive professional resume where I've worked at area hospitals. I've worked in Alexian Brothers Hospital, Northwestern Hospital. I've worked in retail. I've worked in factories. I've worked in HR. I've worked in renewable energy sales. I've worked in other marketing firms. So I do have extensive experience. I am willing to work, as I've been this entire time. I've been applying. I've been sending out my resumes by the hundreds regularly. And I'm quite truthfully exhausted of talking about it. 3 days after my son was born, when I was separated from him, I was accepted into a family shelter for myself, my newborn, and Xavier. And we went there, a place called Shield of Hope. We were there for 14 days, or maybe 20. I don't remember the exact amount of days. It's typically a 14-day stay while they wait to get you what they refer to as a permanent shelter, which is a 6-month shelter. And from the 6-month shelter, you go to an apartment or townhome that is subsidized. I signed a bunch of paperwork for Section 8, but I can't find my application when I look for it online or when I call. And we were in receipt of direct instruction from multiple people that we just had to sit here and wait. Even after we got to the shelter that I'm in now, we've been here approximately 4 months, they told us that we had nothing further to do, that we made it in, that once we were in, we were in. No one was going to put us back outside or harm us in any way, and that, you know, we were in the system now, and that we would literally come home from wherever we were going, our visits with our son, or, you know, errands that I run for the big kids or for myself, and that we would find, before the 6-month period was over, a letter stating that we had received our townhome and apartment and further steps to obtain the keys on that property. We still have not received the property, and we've also received kind of very inconsistent direction about what to do and what the next steps are. It's incredibly fear-mongering and scary. I really don't know, what else I can do. It's incredibly frustrating and painful. My goal is and has always been to be with my children in my own home, as I have been my entire life, up until 2020. People ask about what was special in 2020, and I offer, exact information about what took place, and it unfortunately for me goes back to 2015. In 2015, I was extorted by a member of law enforcement who is currently running for office in the Republican Party, a seat on the Senate nonetheless, despite the fact that my attorney and I appeared in 2015 and were told that he was no longer going to be working for the city of Chicago. He apparently was let go from the city of Chicago, picked up another job in the suburbs, and is now running as a representative on the Senate. This person tried to take me out on dates and take me to concerts and tried to force me to be social peers with a group of people who engaged in behaviors that I was not comfortable engaging in, nor am I comfortable in discussing. I met my significant other prior to Xavier during that time. He was very familiar with the way things worked in the criminal justice system, and he had lawyers and a trust fund and money and support from his mother and family. I met with the state's attorney. His name was Wayne at that time in 2015. And the courthouse was Skokie, where everything was settled, and there was a deal put into place for him that was reducing his sentence from approximately 12 years, 3 consecutive sentences for 4 years each, to a 3.5. Following that deal, I was told that I was no longer going to have to stay in contact with that detective. He was not going to have a job with Chicago anymore, and I was to stay in contact just with my significant other over the recorded line through the state of Illinois that was monitored. Upon his release from the IDOC in 2019, another part of the deal was that I participate with him in some sort of a reality TV show. You may have heard of it. It's called Love After Lockup. I very reluctantly agreed. I did not want to do the show. I at first was very excited because it's a reality show, and I thought for my career in entertainment it would be incredibly beneficial to get our brand out there. We were working in many different arenas at the time. We were doing content sales, we were doing staffing, we were doing promotions and activations for different brands. We were all over the place with our involvement, fitness involvement, renewable energy involvement, basically any and all opportunities that we could get our hands on, we were taking. So I thought at first that it might be some reasonably devised plan to help us and to get us ahead in life, that we were being rewarded for everything that we were quite literally extorted into being a part of. That wasn't the way that it worked out. The way that it worked out was that I was vilified. I was made out to be some sort of person that I am not, that I have never been. They kind of made it funny and entertaining, when in actuality I was there like crying, desperately begging these people to help me. I was not okay in the involvement of the things that were surrounding me, and I wanted no further contact with a lot of the people who kept on contacting me. The producers knew very, very explicit details of what was taking place, and I was under the impression that all I needed to do was continue doing the next step, and that very soon everything would be normal. There would be no more involvement with, law enforcement or state's attorneys or, reality shows, that we would be permitted to go on with our lives and our family. I had 3 children. I have a 4th now, but that was not what happened. From my place of living, my apartment that I lived in with my 3 children, I began being pushed around, robbed, sexually assaulted, and silenced in a number of ways. I have been recording and documenting this thoroughly on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. There is such an extensive electronic footprint of everything that has taken place, not just with federal and government systems, but with third-party applications like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., and so forth. The fact that we are still, 5 years later, nearly, it's been exactly 4 years this June since his 5 years as of this June since his release from the IDOC, and I have spent the majority of these 5 years without a stable home, and not for lack of trying. I went immediately to the subsidized housing, shelter facilities, and 311 and domestic abuse resources and Catholic charities, and I began immediately, as soon as all of this began, giving them all of my information. Following the reality show, and I guess he signed a contract that he knew he had premeditated information that they were planning to scapegoat me in the reality show, and he was going to break up with me. He shot a scene on the reality show without me while I was at home with the kids, making it seem as though he already had broken up with me, but he was still living with me, and we were not broken up. We were very much together. We remained together through November or December of 2019, so 5 or 6 months. I finally moved out in January after calling the parole office and saying, this person is beating me up. He's bringing guns and drugs into the home. I need help. I don't know what to do. I can't get away. He has all of our money in a joint account. He says he'll give me the money to move out, but then he never does. He says, next week I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you next week. I'll give it to you the week after, and he never does. When I would attempt to go to law enforcement, he would disconnect the starter in my car so that I could not get in my vehicle and drive away. I got on the train and went to the courthouse to file EOP. He heard me on my AirPod. I had one AirPod in this ear and the other AirPod was missing. He had stolen it so that when I would use the one AirPod, he could be listening on the other AirPod. So he was listening while I called parole. Parole advised me to go to the court, 555 West Harrison, which there's a whole sort of documentation there of me saying, I need help. This person is beating me up. He's on parole. There's no one checking on him. Please help. Rather than me being assisted in any way, as I said, parole told me there was nothing they could do and recommended that I go to file an EOP. By the time I arrived, because I had to take the train because he had disconnected the starter in my car, by the time I arrived to 555 West Harrison, he was already there and had filed an EOP of his own, inverting all of the allegations that I made against him against me. And in the state of Illinois, once you get an order of protection against someone, they cannot get one against you. So I was screwed over. I tried to return to my apartment. Understand that I was living there with my 3 children. That was my only source of residence. That was our residency. That's where we lived. instead of me being assisted, I was thrown into the street. My children had to subsequently go and live with their fathers, even though I had primary custody of them. And I have literally been fighting for my life ever since. Since that time, I have been sexually assaulted a number of times. I have been robbed a number of times. And when I say robbed, I mean for everything. My bank account has been cleared out a number of times. My vehicle was destroyed mechanically, stolen from me, and then sold unlawfully at auto auction. A brand new Cadillac CTS that I had just paid off. The controlled substance, you have to go into the office. B gave me incredibly amazing